Okay, so we will continue discussing. I want to make sure it's on. Yeah, we'll continue discussing Julie Taymor. Um, we talked about the modern day director Julie Taymor and her approach to directing, and how she marries her directing style also with design. So as we talk about how she's able to do both, we can ease into our discussion on design. Like I said, she pretty much is able to use the text and the visual elements to make her directing really, really come to life. Her directing and design processes are intertwined, and she uses mime and distinct culturally oriented physical movements, incorporates various cultural art forms like Asian puppetry and African mask. And we definitely see this in her directing of The Lion King. It exemplifies that approach. But she's also directed in many other things, including The Tempest, Oedipus Rex, Titus Andronicus, Juan Darien, Carnival Mask, Spider-Man Turn Off the Dark, and films such as Titus, Frida, The Tempest, and Across the Universe. And it's amazing that this play has been running for so long because it's still relevant to modern audiences. It's actually, to me, pretty timeless, and it definitely relates when we talk about cultural aspects of it, because as you can see, she was able to take a cartoon about an African story, and we can see all of the elements of the African diaspora, but also this idea of allowing humans to be in puppetry and it not be so kiddie. It's something that adults and kids alike enjoy. And that relates to, as we talk about folk tales from around the world, we can see how she was able to put this folk tale on stage. So think about that when you think about what you want to emphasize in your production. And working with visual variables, it includes knowing the parts of the stage, and there it is, and being able to place areas on the stage for direction, and there being different levels. So sometimes things are higher or lower than other things, and that makes for a good picture on stage. The spatial relationships, the body shapes and gestures, all of that is part of directing, but we can see how design will come into that, because what is on stage and how the actors use those things are all part of that design and what should be focused. So you can see developing the designs of the designer. If a designer does a rendering, as you can see in the top left corner there, and then what it actually looks like when it's on stage. So you can see that rendering of the set design is on stage, as well as, clearly there's some costume choices there going on. Compare the responsibilities of various designers is what we're going to do. Engage the audience with sensory information to locate the actor physically and psychologically, and to support the ideas of the text is from The Creative Spirit, which is our textbook. In scene design, the scenic designer arranges the theatrical space, represents suggested time period, the time, the locale, and the place. It conveys a mood, establishes the theme. All of that is part of what the scenic designer does. The lighting designer is able to incorporate illumination, focus, mood. Sometimes even the lighting design will help with the location. If it's midday, then the lights might look different than if it were night, for instance. And that also includes the shift in time and place. The costume design exhibit the where, the locale, and the place. If it's winter in Russia, the costume might look a little different than if it's summer in the Caribbean. When, so the period, the time period, we can definitely see that with the costume choices. And then the character, who this person is, and that includes their personality traits, their profession, and sometimes their social means and status, as well as the occasion. So if it's a wedding, then the character might be dressed a little differently than if they're going on a cookout, but we can also see their personality traits in that. Or if they're a nurse, then they might dress differently than if they were a construction worker. And all of that also relates to their social means. Someone who is wealthy might dress a little different than a pauper. The costume design also allows the audience to either get some sort of separation or empathy to or for the character, and awareness of the cultural associations that we continue to see in all aspects of theater as we talk about theater in this class. The sound design includes mood, time period, environment, plot points, events that move the play forward. And the designer's thought process, as we talked about the director, remember the first thing the director has to do once they have decided on a play, and even before they decide, they have to read several plays, but once the play has been established, the designer needs to read and analyze that play and meet with the director to discuss his or her vision or concept. Then they have to do the visual research. That means finding out the time period and the place and what the people wore at that time and place, and start creating the design. Then they show the director their ideas, and then the director agrees, disagrees. Maybe they twerk and change some things. Maybe sometimes the designer must fix things according to the actor. For instance, a lighting designer will need to change the lighting design if the shade of the actor's skin is different than what they are accustomed to or what they had anticipated. Or a costume designer might have to change how a costume is designed depending on if the director has asked the actor to do some physical movements that means that they would need to move and not maybe tear the costume. Once they figure out all of those things and they finalize the ideas and they start constructing the costume. So there's a very quick overview on the design process, and we can see how Julie Taymor really incorporates both directing and design in her work, and she's a great example of, like I said, of both.